Hello and welcome back to this playthrough of Comancheria, the rise and fall of the Comanche Empire scenario. Unfortunately, the sound for this play session was completely corrupted. So I'm going to try to voice over for you here post facto what was going on during this play, and hopefully it'll be enough that you can kind of follow along. So we start with the war column phase, and in this case, the good news is that the column does not move, and then I forget to roll for attrition, but then I remember and go back and roll for attrition. So that column actually then is decreased in size by one, so it's down to a four size. But then the event that I drew, which we'll get to in a second, increases the war column size by 2. So that war column, in fact, goes up by 1 during this particular war column phase. After a bit of hemming and hawing about what having a 6 strength war column on the board is going to mean for me, I move on, and I'm going to be doing a take actions operation with with the Comancheria A. And I'm lining up my tokens like that. And the main thing, I want to keep that 3-4. I'm going to keep that 3-4 unfinished, generally speaking. Although I'm not going to do that this turn, but I want to generally speak, I want to keep it for defense from that war band, presuming it gets to me. So this first band I simply equipped with horses. And so I'm going to send him, I believe I'm going to send him on a buffalo hunt. Actually, I thought about it, and instead I decided to send him. So I decided to send him down here to do a little bit of raiding. The idea being that I'm eventually going to have him park himself actually in Comancheria B rather than Comancheria, I think is kind of what I was thinking. Now, I drew, you can see my reaction. I drew the War 6 instruction, which means now that my north enemy is going to place a 6 strength war band up there, because I don't believe I have anything with a ravaged marker that would prevent that from happening. Oh, no, I did have a ravage marker. Sorry, I did have a ravage marker there. So instead of doing that, I did that. And that war marker then went there. But the other draw from that success check was 4 enemy APs. Yeah, so here I'm sort of debating whether I want to have that warband go back to Comancheria B or possibly just stay out and form Comancheria C in that lower Arkansas space. So I'm kind of trying to think through what I might want to do with that warband. He only has one movement point left, so he actually can't he can't stay in that space. He's got to move somewhere. So. But I choose to raid again. I'm going to just spend the horses to move him out because I wanted to raid with him again. So I do get a success, luckily, this time, so that I can put a ravage marker there on that space. And then I take a horse from that success, and I spend that horse to move him one space off into that area of lower Arkansas, where I think the plan is that I will, once I get to a passage of time, that guy will potentially become its own warband. Its own Comancheria. So on to the second band, and the plan here is to set up a raiding party. So we're gonna give him horses and the Mahimiana, and we're gonna send him out to go raiding. Again, as is often the case, want to try to make sure I have some ravage counters on the board so I don't lose military points during a passage of time. But I'm also have to try to control Upper Arkansas in order to pass my victory check. So need to worry about the tribes that are there. So essentially 2 movement points to get there, and then 1 movement point to do the first raid on that space. And my Mahimiana only has a medicine of 1, so basically I'm drawing 2 for the success check unless I roll a 1 on that, and I don't in that particular case. And that's a dreadful draw, unfortunately. So I'm going to raid one more time. I brought an extra horse, which I knew that I might need in case I needed to get out quickly, or to need an extra movement point to get back. Still a lot of APs, but I did at least get a success out of that. So place a ravage counter, and I'll be able to grab something for that particular raid. In this case, I decided to take a captive, try to get some population points going. And then I spend that horse in order to move 2 movement points back to the Rancheria. So what I'm checking here is I'm trying to decide, and eventually do decide, I'm going to use that last warband to gain some action points. He's, with a Mahimiana within a medicine of 6, I can flip him to finished, and I end up getting 3 action points for it because there's 3 empty spaces to his left when I do that. So I'm able to grab 3 action points, which will come in handy in order to be able to buy some things when I do things like planning, or even just to activate warbands that are not inside of rancherias. And so what I do is I actually spend 2 immediately to activate that warband again, so that I can continue raiding that particular tribe. And my luck continues to be terrible as it relates to raiding on this particular turn. See if shuffling will maybe change my luck. A little bit. At least I get a success. So I get to place a ravage counter. And I'm just remarking on what terrible luck I'm having, because that cup is so full of success counters, but I keep drawing AP counters at that point. But it is what it is. So taking a captive and placing a ravage token. And then gonna raid one more time. Like I said, there's just nothing but success tokens in there at this point. So hopefully 2 successes. So there you go. Finally. So we'll place the third ravaged marker on there. And then we'll take horses and a captive in this particular case. So turns out to be not so bad. With, a lot of APs drawn though, so I have a lot of APs stacked up. So during this sort of operations cleanup phase, my enemies are going to have a lot of opportunity to take actions. So we're starting that process now by rolling to see whether or not they get a free activity. And I've got 2. So I've got 2 unfinished bands in Rancheria A and 1 in Rancheria B, but with a pair of 6s, nobody's getting a free activation. So now I draw a token to see what happens. It's a success token, so it just goes back in. That's just to see if they get a few extra APs, like they needed extra APs. And then are rolling to see who acts and what flips. Now, unfortunately, my north enemy is the one who's acting. And they flipped that over to hunting. You can see I'm not that happy about that, just because the bison are going away at an alarming rate here, unfortunately. So now we just start taking action. So the encroach action, most of what is going to happen here, or the first 3, is they're just going to be pulling ravage tokens off the board. So unfortunately, my strategy and my hope of sort of keeping some ravage tokens on the board is going to be somewhat thwarted by the sheer number of actions that my north enemy is going to get a chance to take here. So then they take that ally action, and that also removes a ravage token, unfortunately. They're going to take some hunt actions. Again, the hunt action, ravage token comes off the board. Instead of taking the hunt action, they take the 3-cost hunt action next. So at least I prevented like the bison from being decimated this turn, but I really I don't have any ravage tokens left anymore. Unfortunately. And this is the next action is a hunt, and so I'm checking to see what area that hunt takes place in. And I believe the first place that I rolled for didn't have any bison in it, so I'm checking what you do in that case, and I'm pretty sure you go up by 1. So yeah. Sorry, no, I was rolling randomly to determine which of those 3. Now I have to determine randomly which of these 3 loses a bison. So that one loses a bison. And then the last thing is this war token, unfortunately. A 6 strength war token, which is going to put a 6 strength war band on the board for my northern enemies. So that gets placed there. And and they've used all of their instruction tokens, so that is the end of things. I forgot to move that, as I always do. I forgot to move that when I finished my operations. Now, I am making a mistake here, which is that war token is supposed to actually go on the board. It's supposed to go on the board with the band, not at the top there. I will eventually figure that out when I sort of do the next operations cleanup, and it ends up being that northern enemy. But that is a mistake right there. That token should go underneath the warband and not back on the instructions. Next up, I've got two war bands on the enemy war bands on the map, so I'm got to double check what happens in that case, and also get a sense for how they're going to move, which much to my dismay turns out to be towards my rancherias is how they're going to move. So first things first, I draw a card to determine who's going to move, and only the west is going to move. In this particular case, they're the only one who is there. And they are going to move 2 spaces to there. Now I'm going to check for attrition for them. Luckily, they're likely to suffer some attrition, and they do. Now, I believe here I forget that I need to roll for attrition for the other warband. Even though it didn't move, I still should be rolling for attrition for it. But I forget to do that. I'm pretty sure I remember to do it. Later, I end up sort of doing it later, but as of right now, I've forgotten to roll for attrition for that one. So now I'm checking the war event, and in this case, I have to draw another card, and all I'm checking is for movement. So we're going to see if either of these columns moves, and luckily for me, neither of those 2 war columns ends up moving. So with the war column phase over, it is my turn now. I get a chance to do something else, and I'm now remembering that I forgot to unstack all these guys, so I'm kind of restacking them at this point, and I'm gonna do a take actions. And the main reason I'm doing take actions right now, even though there was I would love to do some planning, but the problem is I don't want to reduce my band size if I can help it, because with those war bands steaming towards me, I want to keep that 3 strength war band around and able to fight for me. So we're going to send him off to do some raiding again. So 2 points to move, 1 point to raid. I got to roll a 1, and I do, so I get to draw 3 tokens here to check for success, and not a bad result. So 2 success tokens go onto that Mahimiana, and I get to place 2 ravage tokens, which is great. Again, I don't get to place 2 of them. Sorry, I only get to place 1 of them. But I get to place a ravage token, and then I will end up taking a horse and a captive. Next up, I've got to decide if I want to raid again and then spend a horse to get back, or just get my warband back to the Comancheria. And so, in the end, I decide to just send him back, even though it would be great to potentially place another Ravage token. The cup is not in super favorable shape for me right now, and so I'm just going to send them back to the Rancheria and forget to mark them as finished, but I would mark them as finished. That band I do not mark as finished, and in this case I don't take the APs because I'm not marking them as finished, but I need that 3 warband strength in order to use in case I get attacked by one of the warbands that is steaming towards me. So that was a very calculated maneuver on my part. Good or bad, I don't know, but that was the calculation I was making. So now I'm rolling to see if I go to Passage of Time. I would need to roll a 3 or less, and I don't. So I'm going to get one more turn at least before we end up doing a Passage of Time. But before then, we have got to to check for my enemy. So the Operations Cleanup, which is going to allow the enemy to take actions. So I rolled it. That 2 is rolling for Rancheria A. I actually think I forget to roll for Rancheria B. I should roll for Rancheria B there, which has a finished warband in it, and I didn't roll for them. That was a mistake, I think. Should have done that. Admittedly, it wasn't a high chance that it was going to actually happen, but it was a chance. And that right there, by the way, is where I believe that I remembered that last time I forgot to roll for attrition for them way back, if you remember me talking about that. So I rolled for attrition for them sort of way late. So now I'm going to draw a token, and unfortunately it grants them 4 more APs. And then I will roll to see which enemy is acting. And unfortunately, again, it's the North, which is going to just strip those... that Ravage marker off the board, which is really unfortunate. And I've just realized that I have been making a massive mistake throughout this playthrough, which is I'm supposed to be rolling, and there's only a 50% chance of those Ravage tokens coming off the board. So I've actually been making my life significantly more difficult, and I got to fix that. As I continue to go through. That's a thing on the history card that for this period, and I've been completely forgetting about it. So now also there's going to be a period here where I just do a bunch of stuff that I don't actually need to do, because the problem is, if you remember, I forgot to put that War 6 token, that War 6 enemy instruction token, underneath the warband. So right now I'm figuring out what happens if you've got a warband on the board. What happens if you draw another sort of war token, and so I'm going to go through this for a little bit, and then I'm going to suddenly realize, oh wait, it should have been underneath the war column, and then I'm going to kind of go back and undo everything. So just hang with me for a minute while I just be an idiot. So just so you're not sitting here watching in silence, what would happen if that actually had happened is I'd go through the war column procedure. So I drew a card, they ended up moving 1, and then they ended up suffering attrition. Now again, shouldn't be doing any of this because that war token should not have been on the instruction sort of column or the instruction chart over there. The enemy instruction display, as it says there. So it shouldn't even have been there, and I forget when I figure that out, but I think it's coming up soon. So here, I think it's moving again. And this is, I think, right here is where I actually realize what's going on. That should have been there. And so now just trying to go through in my head how to go back. So I'm sort of doing that to mark the 6 that I spent initially. And then, all those will move up. So that's what it should have been. And then I'm changing because I flipped the wrong one in that case, right? Because the way that the display was set up, I flipped the wrong one. So I switched that around as well. And now I'm doing this hunt 2 action. Now I will say, I think I kept the attrition loss on that unit. So I'll need to, when I go back to the game, I'll need to undo that. But I forgot to undo the attrition loss that unit suffered when I mistakenly ran the process. And I've also got it sitting in the wrong place. But so now I'm going to do an encroach action. So I'm spending, these are the APs that I spent sort of, on that War 6 when it shouldn't have been there. And so now I'm rolling to figure out what territory they're going to encroach in. So territory 4. And there's no place in territory 4. This is where this comes up. There's no place in territory 4 for them to place a tribe marker. So I go up to the next highest one. So I go up to territory 5, and I end up placing a tribe token there. Luckily, I've got a space that doesn't have any bison, so I'm able to actually place that there. All right. So back here now, they're gonna go hunting. So they continue spending APs to go hunting. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Trust me, it was just as confusing in the original voiceover. So, but hopefully you've followed what sort of happened in all of that. So now I'm trying to figure out which buffalo to just randomly determine which buffalo in area 3 to remove, because I rolled a 1, but there's no bison there. There's no bison in 2. So we went up to 3 and we picked a bison from 3 in order to hunt them. And then there is an ally token. So spend that. We get 1 change from that, and they end up placing the ally token on the board. So I'm trying to figure out where to put it. So I decided to put it up there because that's kind of out of the way. Not in a particularly great spot. And I want to, I'm coming up to I'm probably coming up to a passage of time at some point soon. And that should be the end of that operations cleanup phase. At any rate, that is the end of that. So at this point, because I know I've got a passage of time coming up, that's where I end up cutting the video. Again, really sorry about the weirdness of this video with the audio from the original video being a complete mess. But hopefully you still enjoyed this video, and if you did, it would be great if you could leave a like or a comment. Those are very helpful for allowing the videos to get better found on YouTube's algorithm. But also, if you're enjoying the channel, it would be great if you could subscribe. That way you'll know when we produce new content. But we'll see you next time for another part of this Comancheria playthrough, hopefully a more normal one on Agility Snip's gaming table.